Hey, welcome back to Common Sense OT Security, where we solve the deepest mysteries of OT security using common sense. Today, we are going to talk once more about cyber war because so much has happened since the last episode, if all of you know. There were some very turbulent developments, obviously. So the Fordo plant has been bombed by the United States in what they have called Operation Midnight Hammer. And as many people had expected, they were using bunker busters delivered by a package of B-2 bombers. And maybe, and just as an overview, before I go to cyber, I just want to give you my opinion on the impact of that strike. So maybe many of you had expected to see a huge crater after the strike. That did not happen. And so apparently the US military had chosen to just be very precise in their bombing campaign and use especially the entries to the Fordo underground facility and the ventilation shafts. And in my non-expert opinion, that is more than good enough, because when you want to destroy those centrifuges, basically all that you have to do is create enough vibration or enough of a blast. You don't have to just blow it all to pieces. It's good enough to create a strong shock wave that is going to destroy those centrifuges. And apparently that is what they did. Again, also contrary to what most people had expected, it was not one B-2 bomber or two, it was a package of 6 that was attacking the Fordo plant, and then another one attacking Natanz once more. So as I would expect, is that all those centrifuges at Fordo are destroyed. What does that mean for the Iranian nuclear program? I think that's a very simple question to answer if we only approach it from a technical perspective. So the centrifuges are destroyed. Is that necessarily the end of the Iranian nuclear program? No, it's not, obviously. And guess what? Iran had told the world pretty much right after the strike. So this is taken from X. Iran's Atomic Energy Agency says nuclear sites will be quickly rebuilt and activity will continue with greater power. How is that possible? I'll get back to that in a second. And then also Russian former President Medvedev chimed in and told us, so their nuclear fuel cycle appears to have been unaffected or sustained only minor damage. The enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. And you may wonder, how is that possible? And the answer is very simple. So when it comes to uranium enrichment and even to building a nuclear bomb, that is not rocket science, my friends. It's a very simple process, unfortunately. And especially in the case of Iran, which managed to execute this process using non-precision parts. And this makes the Iranian nuclear enrichment efforts very ineffective, but still viable, as we have seen over the past decades. So how is that possible? The process is very simple, and the only thing that is a barrier in that process, like it's no point of wondering, well, if it's so simple, could I also do my own enrichment plant in my backyard and maybe even build a nuclear bomb? That is not possible because you need to do it at industrial scale. And this is where you have this risk of being detected by satellite imagery, for example, and by other political watchdogs. So that is the constraint for the uranium enrichment process. It's not that the process would be so super complicated. And certainly Iran has mastered this process, even using totally shitty parts. And therefore, if they wanted to, they can certainly rebuild that capability. How do I know this, or how am I so confident with this assessment? Well, very simple, because there is a precedent for such a scenario. Let me pull up Exhibit A, if I can find it. Okay, here we go. So some of you may remember the Pakistani nuclear program. There is a detailed, in-depth account of the development of this program by somebody who was actually participating, accidentally named Khan, not to be confused with Abdul Qadir Khan, the father of the Pakistani nuclear bomb. And I have this book here, and let me quote from this book. So what we learn here from the Pakistani program is that actually they also encountered a catastrophic loss of their enrichment capability in 1981, because in September 1981, there was an earthquake in that region where KRL was located. It was first Khan Research Labs, then renamed to Kahuta Research Labs. And all those 4,000 centrifuges operating at the research lab had crashed. They were destroyed. So that was a setback for the Pakistani nuclear program. And according to the book, within minutes, President Zia-ul Haq was informed. According to A.Q. Khan, so that's Abdul Qadir, the father of the Pakistani program, he told the president, we have a clean slate and would have to start from the beginning. A.Q. Khan nevertheless assured the president that unexpected disasters do happen, but we have all the required facilities, materials, and know-how. Within 2 years, claims A.Q. Khan, we had installed 5,000 machines and were producing weapons-grade enriched uranium. Guess that. Just imagine that. So this is just a piece of evidence to make you understand, well, certainly this is not necessarily the end of the Iranian nuclear program. And as of just a couple of minutes ago, according to the recent news on X, well, President Trump claims that Iran will, for the time being, stop their enrichment efforts. This is not caused by the destruction at Fordo and Natanz. This would only be caused by a policy change. And also, according to recent news, President Putin from Russia has offered his help in pushing the Iranians a little bit towards that goal, so that they give up their enrichment efforts. Certainly, it is not guaranteed that this is going to be everlasting. And also keep in mind that in the early years of the Iranian nuclear program, that whole effort was clandestine. So it was kept secret, and it was only uncovered against the intentions of the regime. So this is what I think you should consider about this particular attack. But how does this relate to our subject, cyber war? I think now we can say with certainty that in this particular respect, cyber war has failed or was not an option, because that very same target was the prime objective 15 years ago when the Stuxnet attack was executed. Okay, and now if you compare those different scenarios, I think it's pretty obvious if the powers that are had seen any chance to take down Fordo, especially using a cyber attack, they would certainly have done it. And because, I mean, who would actually like to send that package of B-2 bombers And with that attack that could have triggered a regional war, maybe even a global war. So who would have done that if there would have been that alternative where you wouldn't have to put soldiers in harm's way? I think that's a no-brainer. It was not considered because all those cyber warriors at US Cyber Command will most likely have told the president and the Secretary of Defense Hegseth, well, sorry guys, we can't do it. We can't pull it off. That is what I would suspect. I wasn't there, but that would be the most logical explanation. Otherwise, they would certainly have done it, or at least they would have tried. So what does this tell us about cyber as opposed to kinetic force? And I think it's fairly obvious. You know, cyber has its own characteristics because it is different from kinetic, that you cannot simply bet on putting more force, more power into your attack and then get a guaranteed result. So that's the major difference. When you think about kinetic, you can easily understand, well, that even a very hard target such as Fordo can be blown to pieces. I think that the US military took the most intelligent route in this particular attack, but they certainly could have also dropped a tactical nuclear weapon on the whole mountain and just blow it up. That would have been much more dramatic. It would certainly have come with much more repercussions. But obviously, from just a physics perspective, that is possible. In other words, when it comes to kinetic, it's all about the energy that you can use for destructive purposes. And that is different in cyber. So let me give you a very simple analogy here. Let's just assume, I would say, well, Iran's cyber forces have, I'm just making this number up, 100 cyber warriors, okay? Oh, but US Cybercom, they have thousands. So their capabilities are 10 times higher. That's bullshit. That is not the case. And so you cannot simply scale your your destructive cyber capabilities or offensive cyber capabilities, if you want to call that, by adding headcount or by adding computing power, not even by adding the AI. So that's not going to happen. And this brings us to the fundamental question: what do you need for a cyber attack, for a cyber physical attack, especially, right? So I'm not talking about IT style attacks. I'm not talking about ransomware. What do you need in order to execute a cyber attack successfully? And that is, at the end of the day, very simple, my friends. You need vulnerabilities. So your cyber attack or your cyber weapon will only be as potent as the target's weaknesses. It's like a hand that fits in a glove or a key that fits in a lock. So that means that the victim creates opportunity. If that opportunity doesn't exist, you cannot execute a cyber attack. As simple as that. And I think that's the fundamental insight that I want you to understand, that basically it's about your protection, how good it is or how bad. And certainly if you don't know anything about your process networks, then I can predict right away your protection is in the toilet. Because if you don't even know how many networks you have and what's on them, you will certainly not be able to protect those networks. But that is a very, very important insight. The victim creates opportunity. Without that opportunity, there is no cyber attack. And that's different from the kinetic space. Very important difference. With a kinetic weapon, especially when it comes to nuclear, you can destroy pretty much every single target in the world, no matter how big it might be, no matter how well shielded it might be. So that there is no bunker that could withstand an H-bomb being dropped on it. Such a thing doesn't exist. In cyber, that's very much different. And if you want to dive deeper into this thought process, I would suggest that you check out my other work on specific examples that we have seen. So, for example, I suggest that you revisit my video on the Ukraine attack in 2015. Where I also point out, well, these were the various vulnerabilities that have been exploited in the attack. And if those vulnerabilities hadn't been there, the attack would have been stopped right at the beginning. Or my talk 2016 at S4, Critical Penetration, where I explain how you can arrive at this type of analysis. Basically, it's some glorified threat modeling, if you will. So you will find that on the S4 Events YouTube page. And also, if you want to dive even deeper, in my book, Robust Control System Networks, I also explain how a well-protected process network at Natanz would have made the Stuxnet attack impossible. And that is the one thing that you should know is that this doesn't require the best defenders in the world. And that is another thing that is important to know. And this is also why I ask you to check out my analysis of the Ukraine attack as an example, or check out the Triconex attack. Even in those high-profile attacks, including Stuxnet, it was very mundane and obvious vulnerabilities that were exploited. It was not like, oh, they were already very, very good on the defensive side. No, I think maybe the outlier is when you think about the second version of Stuxnet, well, those stolen digital certificates, which required physical break-in, I think in an office in Taiwan or somewhere. So that was the outlier. But other than that, even in the high-profile attacks, very mundane vulnerabilities have been exploited. And every serious, thorough OT security audit would have surfaced those mundane vulnerabilities. And you have seen that, for example, with the Triconex attack, with that very good talk from Gutmanis. I pointed to that a couple of times, where he basically told us, well, those operators at the chemical facility, they thought they had a DMZ, but it wasn't a DMZ, but nobody bothered to check. So this is how things work when it comes to cyber attacks in real life, cyber physical attacks. And this is why I reiterate, we should be optimistic, because we can actually stop the attackers in their tracks if we do our job correctly. And that is not so difficult to do. So that is my bottom line. I think that's very important to understand. Don't imagine like, oh, we have those potent attackers. This is like, when I remember all those discussions that I had 15 years ago, I spent a lot of time discussing with people in the think tanks in Washington, D.C. back in the days. And also, let's just say people from three-letter agencies, and most of them were so convinced, no, our hackers, they can intrude anywhere. You cannot protect yourself against our super hackers. And in my opinion, that's just nonsense. And you have just witnessed a perfect example or perfect proof for that, because if they could penetrate every target with their super hacking capabilities, well, then certainly Hegseth and Trump wouldn't have sent the B-2s because it would have been so much cheaper and nicer. And I would just imagine, and the credibility of those U.S. cyber forces, you don't even need to install your antivirus because they will get in anyway. That is nonsense. It does not happen. And now we have the proof for that. And in this respect, I think the recent events for us, for the OT security community, are a reason to have a bit more optimistic outlook on the future, because we have learned, well, apparently it is possible to defend even against the most credible cyber attackers on the planet, the largest and most potent cyber force located in Maryland, near the NSA, US Cyber Command. They didn't pull it off. Okay, I leave you with those thoughts, and then I'm going to see you next week, same place, same time.